one of the last things I want to ask you guys. There's been a lot of James Bond news. Speaking of franchises, over the last few weeks, with Amazon paying exuberant amounts of money to the Broccoli family to, invest in their broccoli stocks and to give the James Bond franchise over to Amazon. Now it's been announced that producers Amy Pascal and David Hyman are in talks to produce the next Bond movie. There's been all kinds of little, like this director may be attached and this actor. All I want to know from you guys is what would be the James Bond package of like director and star that you can even say like have this person as a villain too. Like who would be the package that would be I'm super excited. I'm back on the train cuz I'm a little bit like all right, this might be the end of like not that James Bond was like this crown jewel, but like that montage at the Academy Awards did kind of feel like a little bit of like RIP to James Bond. You're going to become basically like toilet paper for Amazon right now.
Yeah, it's like they crammed it into the in memoriam section and just made that longer.
Right, exactly. An in memoriam for James Bond. But what would be the James Bond package that you would be most excited to see?
I'll go first, just because mine's really quick. Yeah, oh yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Well, I was going to say, my answer is I don't know, because most of the successful James Bonds have not been. Daniel Craig wasn't an established star. Even Sean Connery, but Sean Connery wasn't a huge star when he made James. Roger Moore wasn't a big star. Pierce Brosnan is the only one who was sort of well known. Timothy Dalton wasn't well known. So James Bond usually goes to someone that we don't know. So picking a name to me, like everyone's like, oh, Idris Elba, Regé Jean Page, there are a bunch of names that have been out there the past few years who are wonderful actors and very charismatic. And I'm like, yeah, I could see that. But I think there's almost something wonderful about James Bond being, if not a nobody, someone who's not really well known. So that's my take on. And in terms of director and the such, I don't know. There are too many names out there. Give me Christopher Nolan.
Like, I think we're at a place where the only reason that we're still doing James Bond movies is because money. And I know that sounds like a really simple answer, but like I feel like the world we're living in now, there's not room for James Bond. You either have to make him so dark that he sort of outdarks Daniel Craig, which
I
we saw what a blast that was, right? Or you have to set it in a world where it's so over the top and parody that he's practically Austin Powers, because you can't put I was going to say Austin Powers. You can't put James Bond in the current climate without just making the movie ultra bleak. These are not fun spy romps anymore when the world is on fire. Like in the modern era, James Bond does not have American allies. Like in the modern era, like maybe that's your story, but Jeff Bezos is not going to tell that story. Like it's where does James Bond go when all of his resources from like countries with more access have turned their backs on the free world? That's an interesting story. I don't think your average James Bond fan wants to see that. So what are you left with? You're left with Black Bag. Like, we got a good James Bond movie this year. It's Black Bag.
Yeah. I do think it would be...
And it has Regé Jean Page in it.
Yeah. I do think I'm maybe a little bit more kind of in Jason's pool of like, let's discover an unknown. We don't need like someone who, is already an established star to kind of jump into this. I don't even need Christopher Nolan. Let's just get a good journeyman director doing this.
I'm fine with that.
I think that almost killed the Craig movies, is like those getting maybe like a little bit pretentious in some places. And yeah, let's just bring this back to being kind of like, it's a fun action franchise. It's globetrotting. We can do it at a smaller budget. I don't think Amazon will do that. I think they'll try and make it an event thing. But, let's take it back to a bit of, I don't know, just a bit of fun, but also not turning into that Fast and Furious thing of like, this is so ridiculous that it almost like is boiling over into laziness.
Yeah. So the thing I would say is, first of all, I'm a huge James Bond fan. I own, oh God, like 20 plus James Bond movies on DVD.
Do you have the massive box set that I used to always see at?
Yep.
I do.
Yep. Yeah. And I watched them multiple times. I've seen every James Bond film, 5+ times probably. So, Josh, I would push back on it. Oh, do we need James Bond? Yeah, it's a fun.
It's an institution.
It's a fun series. Well, it's a fun series of movies. It's a fun character that people can relate to and already understand a lot of things about. And frankly, the Craig movies, with maybe one or two exceptions, have been really, really good, with some very smart directing, really good casting of villains and things like that. I love where the franchise has been in recent years. It almost kind of got supplanted, I think, for a little while by Mission Impossible. They're very similar kind of films.
And Mission Impossible has the sense of fun that I feel like the Bond movies kind of abandoned for a little bit. Especially when you get into like Spectre, which I remember when I rewatched that a couple years ago before the last Craig movie, because I didn't remember anything that happened in it, and I was like, guys, it's not the Conformist. This is James Bond. We've gone a little up our ass here.
Yeah, the Daniel Craig Bonds, I think, got a little spooked from the Bourne movies. I think that they came around and they were like, oh, Bourne is trying to kind of steal our thunder a little bit. And I feel like you had those two franchises competing a little bit for a while.
Also, Netflix might buy Bourne, so you might be getting more Bourne movies.
I feel like, James Bond, let's get back to the fun gadgets. Mm-hmm. I feel like the Craig movies have gotten away from that a little bit. Mission Impossible does a good job with the gadgets.
Yeah.
So get back to the gadgets. A charismatic, sexy Bond who can also beat the crap out of a guy in an alleyway. That's what we need. And go have some fun with it. Spy. We frankly, we don't get enough spy movies. We talked about Black Bag endlessly. Give me more Black Bag. Spy movies are good and they're interesting. And despite the fact that we are in a very difficult, tumultuous political climate internationally, you can find spy stories in there.
It doesn't have to always climate to have spy stories.
That's true.
It doesn't always have to be we're saving the world in every single movie. And so if you're not doing
Connery ones are not like that. Like From Russia with Love is not a save the world thing. It's more of a it's closer to like a John le Carré novel of spycraft in nations snooping on each other and trying to pass things off from the other one.
I feel like the uncertainty in the world on the global stage, the uncertain allies and things like that, makes a more rich environment for a potential spy story.
That's true. Yeah.
Of shifting alliances and that kind of stuff. I mean, that it's there. Just do it smartly, Amazon, please.
And it's not like and the thing about the Bond movies, and I know Jason is, I think, a bigger fan of them than I am. I don't dislike the Bond movies by any stretch, but I think you can even look within the franchise's history of a ton of what to do and what not to do. Because, we talk about the Bond movies in this hushed, reverent tone. Bond's got a lot of stinkers. Man, every Bond made some bad Bond movies. So it's not like the track record. It's not like you're messing with an untouchable track record.
Right. Everyone has at least one stinker under their belt. Even Craig and Connery, for as much as people. The one person who may not have a stinker is George Lazenby, because he was only in one movie, and that one rocks.
So yeah, you can look at the history. You can figure out how can we update this for a new era, which is maybe tough. Who knows? But I think there is grounds here to try some things that will honor the legacy, but also say, hey, remember these used to be fun.
Yeah.